and 2, your questions answered. And we're going to take a look at as many of your questions as we can around the subject of coronavirus vaccines on a day when we have had more positive news and some positive results from the Oxford vaccine, along with the other 2 vaccines that we heard about earlier in the week. So to discuss your many questions that we've had, Dr. Bharat Pankhania, who's from the University of Exeter Medical School, and Dr. Mohammed Munir, a virologist at Lancaster University. A warm welcome to both of you. Thank you for your time. Goodness, we have had a lot of questions, which is interesting in itself. Bharat Pankhania, if I may start with you, Sandra Irving wants to know, during the trials, because these are ongoing, of course, during the trials, how are the participants exposed to the virus?
So it's a very good question from Sandra, and ideally what we want to do is immunize the participant and then expose them to normal living conditions. In other words, go out and about and do your normal work. So that's why some of the vaccines have been tried in countries like India, United States, and Brazil, where they've had lots of cases. So that's where you are replicating potential exposure to the virus from other infectious people. That would be a good way to do it, and that's how it's being done.
Okay, thank you. Mohammed Munir, I'm going to move to our second question simply because I'm told we've had an awful lot of people asking variants on this question. This is actually from Kathy, who is talking about whether the vaccine is safe for immune-compromised patients. She says, as a group, we can't safely take a live vaccine. We are among those who will be offered a vaccine first because we're vulnerable, but we do need to know whether we will be able to take any vaccine safely. And so we've had a lot of questions on that. So your thoughts, Dr. Munir?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Jane, for having me. I think the important thing here is to identify which vaccine is it and what kind of volunteers being recruited into the clinical trial, because generally what we see, the immunocompromised people will have some difficulties in mounting the immune response induced by the vaccines, and that is not particularly about the COVID-19, that is applicable across all the vaccines we use. So once a particular vaccine would become available or approved, at that point we will be in the position to identify how many people were recruited in the volunteer in the phase 3 trial to demonstrate whether it is effective in a specific age group or specific vulnerability. Based on that data, the recommendation will be provided by that vaccine manufacturer whether it is safe in a particular age group or particular vulnerabilities or not. But whatever would be the case, the information would become available before the vaccine would be administered into the people, whether it is safe for immunocompromised or cancer people or not.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. And I mean, Dr. Pankhania, I'm interested in your thoughts on this as well, because we've had so many questions on that, around that topic. I mean, it shows that, quite rightly, people really want a lot of reassurance, don't they?
Yes, and we have to take our people with us because there's a lot of negative news about vaccines in general on social media. And what I would say is these novel vaccines, the messenger RNA ones, they're not live vaccines or anything. So I would expect them to also be safe in immune suppressed people. The only vaccine where I would be a little bit unsure about or a bit cautious about would be the live attenuated ones. But we've got many which are what we would call messenger RNA vaccines coming online, and I expect them to be safe in a large group of people, if not all groups of people.
Okay, in fact, apologies, Dr. Munir, because I've just realised that the next question is actually from Christine Frost, who talks about cancer. You mentioned cancer. She says, I'm having treatment for cancer. Can I still have the vaccine? So again, you were talking, Dr. Munir, about vulnerable groups, which is a sizable section of the population, I suppose.
Yes, absolutely. Again, I think that really the answer is about how the vaccine has been evaluated. And as Dr. Bharat mentioned, is that we do have vaccines. Those are relatively of new technology. So certainly there will be challenges around, for example, mRNA-based vaccine, Pfizer and Moderna, which provide protection more than 90%. That's what we have heard so far. But still, those are new technologies. Certainly there are questions that need to be addressed. And again, the question will only be addressed when we will have access to the data. How many people of those were recruited into the phase 3 trial were having cancer conditions, and has the vaccine still been safe and protective in those vulnerable groups, because that is the only way you will be able to demonstrate whether it is safe into the cancer patient. But once again, once we reach to that point where the vaccine is recommended, there will be certainly recommendation around all of that domain.
Right, okay. I'll stay with you because Sally in Bedfordshire asks, what about people who were told to shield? Will all vaccines be suitable for them? Will these people be a top priority? Dr. Munir.
Yes, absolutely. I think vulnerable group are the one really that are on the topmost list in the priority document to be used to be really immunized in the first instance, because I mean, as we all understand at this moment, is the major impact of the disease in terms of casualty, in terms of severe impact, is on to the vulnerable group. People who are shielded, who are under the vulnerable category, will be the first one to be immunized. But again, at the same time, we need to bear in mind that we have 2.3 million people those fall into that category in this country. Will we have that vaccine available that could be scaled up into the version that it could be used to immunize all of those shielded or vulnerable group or not?
Okay. Dr. Pankania, Rob Holliday wants to know whether there's going to be a process whereby differing age group categories in one household can all be vaccinated together. Now, I suppose we certainly haven't had announcements about processes and things, but I mean, is that something that is medically advisable or desirable?
No, and we've got to go with public health protocols. In other words, you target the at-risk groups first, followed by healthcare workers who can often infect and be infectious to their patients. So we have to address the at-risk issues first. Having said all of this, as a public health measure, I'm also advocating that whilst we immunize the at-risk people, we can very rapidly immunize otherwise fit and healthy people in the younger age groups. And by doing that, what you achieve is a lower level of viral activity in the community, which by default also has the potential to protect more vulnerable people, because there's less virus in the community because you've immunized a large number of people in the community.
Right, right. So that's why ultimately you want to get to as many people having it as possible, I suppose. Ultimately, but of course we have to prioritise those who are vulnerable, indeed. I suppose. Dr. Munir, Peter in Leicestershire wants to know why the government has ordered 150 million doses of a vaccine when our population is about 70 million. It's ordered both all the three, various figures from the three vaccines that we're all talking about this week. So that question of why so many for a population of 70 million?
Yeah, well, that is a very important question. We have pledged around 355 million doses for the population of 7 million. First primary reason is that we don't know which vaccine would be approved. We have these 355 million doses across 7 different vaccine manufacturers, pharmaceuticals. So as I said, the primary reason is that we don't know which vaccine would be effective. And then other way is that, most of the vaccines, they are having double dose. So basically what we are looking at is half of the total one that we will be looking into. And also the availability would be scaled through the course of this immunization regime. So in the beginning, we might have, for example, the Pfizer one, that will only be providing 10 million to the UK, while we have 40 million pledged. So across the time, it would be distributed. So therefore, I think it's good to have doses from multiple technologies, from multiple sources, so that we will have supplied and access to those when we need it.
Okay, Dr. Pankania, I know you were nodding through an awful lot of
Yes.
that, and that's interesting. I'm going to put a separate question to you, because again, I'm told this is another question that an awful lot of people have been asking us. We'll pick out the one from Sandra in Lincolnshire, who says, once the vaccines are available, will we be able to choose which version we would prefer to have? Now, that's assuming all three are given the go-ahead, but let's say they are. That's a really interesting point. Are we allowed to pick one, or does it just depend which one our GP surgery gets in?
I hope there isn't a scramble for I want A, B, or C. What is required is good public health messaging about the safety, the efficacy, and the availability of these vaccines. What I want to do and share with our listeners and viewers is if a vaccine is on the market, please rest assured that it's going to protect you, and there is no need for you to go shopping to find a better version. Be grateful that we've got a vaccine that will be given to us by our National Health Service.
I mean, it's lovely to see a smile even from you, because we haven't had many smiles since March. But it's interesting because it ties in with what you were saying earlier about you have to take the country with you. I mean, again,
Yes.
it comes back to this issue of there will need to be public reassurance for some people.
It is very important, and whilst it is easy to say take it or leave it, when I was in charge of mumps, measles, rubella, and we had a lot of people not taking it, I went out of my way to inform, educate, advise, and carry my population with me. And we turned it around in the Southwest from a total, we are not going to take it by a certain community, to having done my shoe leather work. They turned around, they took it, their children got protected, and that's the way to do it.
Yeah, fascinating, and fascinating to have that example, actually. Dr. Munir, Stephen Harrison wants to know, what is the storage temperature for the Oxford vaccine, which is the one we're talking about today? And this is interesting because it's different than the other two that we mentioned this week. Explain the relevance of this question.
Yes, absolutely. I think one of the major challenges in terms of distribution of the vaccine would be how would it be stored, and whether it would be stored throughout the chain, or we need to store it only at the time when it is about to be administered. So as we know, Pfizer and Moderna, they have around minus 20 to minus 70 Celsius temperature storage. With the Oxford one, although the information hasn't been provided yet in the detail what would be the storage temperature, but it wouldn't be the freezing temperature. It would very likely be at the fridge, or the most would be minus 20 Celsius, which is affordable within the surgeries, pharmacies, and small hospitals.
Okay, and again, Dr. Pankania nodding through that. I'm going to move to a question from Anne Cooper, because this is really interesting. After having a vaccine, how long will I be immune for, Dr. Pankania? Actually, do we know yet?
No, we don't. But the good news is that all the vaccines that we've talked about so far, the mRNAs and the Oxford AstraZeneca one, there are different platforms, but they all seem to show that they're making both humoral antibodies as well as cellular antibodies. What that leads me to believe is that we will most probably make good immune memory as well. So I'm feeling very positive of late that these vaccines may actually work for longer than I had thought they would. So I'm feeling positive about it.
Okay, well, really interesting. I'm going to close with a question that I hope you'll both have time to nod to, because, I mean, interestingly, this one is anonymous, but this is crystal ball time, gentlemen, or forecasting time, because this questioner wants to know, essentially, a timescale. He or she says, we've been hearing for ages that the Oxford vaccine will be ready for approval within weeks, but we still don't have it. I'm an older, vulnerable person. I was hoping to get mine soon, essentially, in order that I could spend Christmas with my family. So when is approval really, in capital letters, really likely to happen? Dr. Pankania, I'll come to you first on that.
So the Oxford one had to stop its trials twice for safety evaluations, and it is perfectly safe, and it's going ahead with its analysis and evaluation in phase 3. Therefore, there's a bit of a delay. I doubt very much that we will have a vaccine this side of Christmas, which you can have and be protected from. Because remember, to get the vaccine, you've got to be immunized, and then a few days, 28 days in the AstraZeneca, the Moderna and the Pfizer ones, and then you are fully, properly immunized. So I don't think it's going to happen this side of Christmas.
Okay, good to have an honest answer. Dr. Munir, your thoughts?
Yes, I am with him. I think one of the things that I would like to highlight, it depends on which vaccine we're talking about. If it is a Pfizer one, Pfizer is ready to deposit documentation to FDA for approval, and if they get approval within this month, this means that they will have distribution next month in December, and we will hopefully have 5 to 10 million in the UK for the Pfizer vaccine. But again, the timeline required to have a proper impact of the vaccine would be around a month. So basically what we are looking on is first quarter of 2021.
Okay, well, you heard it here, and let's hope. And we will speak to you both again. Gentlemen, thanks so much for your time, as ever. Good to have you with us. Dr. Mohammed Munir, a virologist at Lancaster University, and Dr. Bharat Pankania from the University of Exeter Medical School. Good to see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.